Facing the thousands of citizens on the walls of Distant Guard, our Shenlang is about to use his eloquent tongue again, activating his super bluffing mode. Not long ago, Su Nan ordered his elder brother Su Quan to lead 5,000 troops to besiege Distant Guard, hoping to trap Shenlang and others alive in the city. Little did they know, Shenlang had already made full preparations. At this moment, he ordered all the citizens in the city to gather outside the city lord's mansion. Then he climbed onto the lookout platform and shouted, "Fellow villagers and elders, we can no longer stay in Distant Guard. Su Nan's army will soon surround the entire city, and our food supplies are already low. Once trapped here, we can only starve to death. I'm sure every family has already received enough money. Hurry up, take all the food you can and return to the countryside to seek refuge with your relatives and friends. As for me, Shenlang, I will not stay in Distant Guard any longer because I haven't killed enough. I'm going to other cities in White Knight County to kill those Western merchants and plunder all their money." As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd immediately began to buzz. After all, there are only so many merchants in Distant Guard, some of whom have made a fortune while others have barely scraped together a small amount of money. We common folks, where can we plunder enough to stay or to go? For a while, everyone was caught in a dilemma. Just then, Shenlang continued to shout, "I'm sure there are still many people who haven't reclaimed their own money. The cities I'm heading to next have hardly any garrison, making it easy to clean them out. It's just a pity that those goods have become ownerless. Brave men, are you willing to join me in cleaning up these Western pests?" As his voice fell, those who had already tasted the spoils were immediately stirred up, raising their hands and shouting to follow Lord Shen into battle. Seeing this, Shenlang's face showed a smug smile. The common people at the bottom are never able to resist the temptation of profit. Immediately after, Shenlang had Wu Lai quickly select 5,000 able-bodied men, and without any delay, they lit torches and headed straight for the nearest white token city. Before leaving, to encourage everyone, Shenlang deliberately conveyed a message. The sovereign decrees, all the property of Western merchants in White Knight County belongs to the citizens of Yu Kingdom. Whatever wealth is plundered, it all belongs to the individual. Just shortly after Shenlang left, this message was relayed to Su Quan by a spy. "Lord Su Quan, Shenlang has issued a mass slaughter order on behalf of the sovereign, allowing anyone to freely plunder Western merchants. They've already set out to attack White Token City." Upon hearing this, Su Quan was shocked. He had just begun assembling his troops, hoping to catch Shenlang off guard, but he hadn't expected this wretch to have already fled. After the shock, he immediately ran to Su Nan's study. This incident happened so suddenly, he must hurry to discuss countermeasures with his lord. Moments later, inside Su Nan's study, upon hearing the news, Su Nan frowned deeply, silently staring at the map on the table, lost in thought. Seeing this, Su Quan bowed and said, "My lord, please allow me to lead 2,000 cavalry to pursue and kill these lowlifes. I will ensure that White Token City suffers no harm." Su Nan shook his head after listening and said, "There's no need. Let them plunder and kill." Upon hearing this, Su Quan was stunned, his face full of astonishment. Just as he was about to ask, he saw Su Nan turn around and say indifferently, "When we were subjects of Yu Kingdom, to make money, we had to engage in smuggling and sell those common people as slaves. Now that Western Celestial Province has become our Su family's territory, doesn't that mean we have to start all over with these trades?" Upon hearing this, Su Quan instantly understood Su Nan's intention and said in realization, "Do you mean to let these lowlifes kill and plunder the Western merchants, and then we take all their possessions from them?" Su Nan smiled, looked at Su Quan, and asked, "Do you know what the characteristic of these plunderers is?" Su Quan thought for a moment, then replied, "It's insatiable greed." Su Nan nodded and said, "Exactly." Now, these few thousand men assembled by Shenlang seem to be high in spirits, but once they have plundered all the Western merchants in White Knight County, guess what problem will arise? Su Quan immediately understood and said, "These people either want to live a life of luxury or will want to plunder more. More seriously, the uneven distribution of spoils can easily lead to internal strife. They are originally commoners, and after getting rich from plundering, they are like wild beasts that have tasted meat, their greedy desires hard to curb, and Shenlang has too few men to possibly stand against these mobs." Hearing this, Su Nan ordered, "Su Quan, you lead 3,000 troops, together with Three-Eyed Evil's 3,000 cavalry, to White Knight County to pursue and encircle Shenlang and his men. But remember, absolutely do not hinder their plundering. Wait until the monk soldiers from Great Calamity Temple and the Grandmaster Banrua from Chu Country have all arrived. Then we can join forces to clean these lowlifes out completely. By then, all the wealth will belong to our Su family." Meanwhile, on the way to the main city of White Knight County, thousands of strong men led by Shenlang swept through like locusts, leaving no grass growing wherever they passed. The thugs and ruffians of the cities around White Knight County, even before Shenlang's plundering army arrived, had spontaneously assembled and started acting. As soon as Shenlang's militia army arrived, they immediately joined in. In an instant, the original force of 5,000 swelled to 40,000. At the same time, Su Quan, Three-Eyed Evil, and the monk soldiers from Great Calamity Temple gradually converged, with the military strength ultimately reaching 13,000. At this moment, the whole situation became increasingly complex and unpredictable. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, more than 10 days passed. Zhang Chong finally led 3,000 troops to White Token City. At this moment, his expression was stern, and he was fearless inside. He knew well that White Knight County from top to bottom was already controlled by the Su family, and the officials in the city had long become the Su family's lackeys. Even as a prefect, he might face all kinds of difficulties entering the city. However, as he stepped through the city gate, he was stunned by the scene before him. He saw all the officials and merchants standing on both sides of the street, trembling with fear, eagerly waiting and welcoming his arrival. Especially the Western merchants, upon seeing Zhang Chong, were like seeing the dawn in the darkness, waving their hands and shouting with joy. This scene was in stark contrast to what he had imagined, and for a moment, Zhang Chong couldn't come to his senses. Why are these people so enthusiastic? Aren't they supposed to make things difficult for me, exclude me, and not let me into the city? Just then, a spy quickly came to Zhang Chong and whispered something in his ear. When he learned the reason, he was even more shocked. Master Shen, how many more surprises do you still have in store for this old man? I know you are formidable, but it's only been a few days, and you've already wreaked havoc on the cities around the main city of White Knight County, driving these wealthy merchants to flee to White Token City. Although the officials and merchants here have been excluding me, given the current situation, it's clear they are even more afraid of you, Shen Lang. But no matter, since Master Shen dares to stir things up, I will stay the course with you. I will take care of the remaining matters in White Knight County. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in Snowland City, Shen Lang was sitting in the guest house hall, looking down at the secret letter in his hand, his mouth slightly curving upwards. It seems that Zhang Chong's army has successfully entered the scene and stationed in White Knight County. At that moment, Wu Lai hurried in to report, Master Shen, the Su family's army of 13,000 has us surrounded, and they will soon make their move. Now, from the north, south, east, and west, only the east remains free of enemy forces. Shen Lang's mouth slowly curved into a smile, saying calmly, the Su family too has been drawn by the wealth I've plundered, focusing all their attention on me now. Following that, Wu Lai continued, the atmosphere in the city seems a bit strange now. Some of the militia are increasingly hostile towards us. Shen Lang chuckled coldly, saying, that's naturally because I didn't lead them to plunder the main city of White Knight County, blocking their path to wealth. As they were speaking, Shen 13 hurriedly came to report, Master, several militia leaders outside request an audience. Moments later, 3 fierce-looking men entered the hall. They were 3 of the 5 highest skilled leaders elected by the militia. One of the men with buck teeth stepped forward and asked respectfully, Lord, we've been staying in Snowland City for some days now, and the brothers are getting impatient. They want to attack the main city of White Knight County to make their fortune. At this, the other 2 also chimed in, Lord of the city, you promised to lead us to wealth. Right now, White Knight County is right before us, and countless mountains of gold and silver await us. If we still can't move out, that would be really unfair. As his voice fell, a multitude of dissatisfied complaints suddenly came from outside the door. Seeing this, Shen Lang couldn't help but sneer inwardly. These guys want to force my hand. If I don't agree tonight to let them plunder White Knight County, I fear these people might revolt. But right now, with the Su family's army surrounding us, it's like sitting on a powder keg, ready to explode at any moment. In White Knight County, Chief of Staff Xiao Wuchang is having tea with Su family's envoy Su Lu. Over the years, with the backing of the Su family's power, Xiao Wuchang, ostensibly just a deputy, has already become the actual ruler of White Knight County. Su Lu casually remarked, the 1,300,000-strong army of Chu country has already mobilized. General Zhong Yao can only do his best to resist. Chan King Arutai's 50,000 troops and the 5,000 monk soldiers from Great Calamity Temple will soon be able to meet through the Su family's army. By then, who else in Western Celestial Province can stop us? Just with Zhang Chang's 3,000 troops? Hearing this, Xiao Wuchang laughed and shook his head, but did not respond. Su Yuan continued, Wu country's army has marched south to attack Weno Castle, expanding from 30,000 to 60,000 troops. Not to mention the southern Ouyang country battle. Zhu Lin's 60,000 troops have completely fallen. Today's Yu kingdom is indeed facing enemies on 3 fronts. At this point, Xiao Wuchang still did not speak, but the scales in his heart were gradually tipping towards the Su family. He was well aware of Yu kingdom's current predicament, let alone being attacked on 3 fronts. Right now, even sustaining a large-scale 2-front battle was becoming difficult. Just then, Su Yuan's voice interrupted his thoughts. Chief Xiao, now that the dismemberment of Yu kingdom is a foregone conclusion, what concerns could you possibly have? Once our Su family captures the province of the Southern Journey and achieves the unification of Su and Chang, the territory we control will certainly not be inferior to Yu kingdom's current extent. And Chief Xiao, as a founding hero, being appointed as a count is a done deal. Upon hearing this, Xiao Wuchang was tempted, but he still remained calm and asked his most pressing question. Envoy Su, forgive my boldness in asking, who will be king after the unification of Su and Chang? Su Yuan smiled and answered without hesitation, of course, Arutai will be king, and our lord will be the prime minister. Hearing this, Xiao Wuchang was secretly amazed at Su Nan's ruthlessness. He didn't care about the nominal honor at all, willingly ceding the kingship. On the surface, it seemed he was loyal to King Arutai, but in reality, he had almost wiped out all of Arutai's brothers in secret. The only 2 children left were born of a Su family woman. Although Arutai was formidable in martial prowess, he knew nothing about governance, and Su Nan took this opportunity to firmly control the Chang state's power. The so-called unification of Su and Chang appeared as if Chang was swallowing Su, but in fact, it was Su swallowing Chang. In a few years, perhaps Arutai would die suddenly like Aragang, and then the Chang state would completely belong to the Su family. With this in mind, Xiao Wuchang asked again, I am still unclear on one matter. Now that the Su family has seized the perfect opportunity and success is within sight, why allow Shenlang to plunder those Western merchants? Surely the Su army could have stopped all this. Before he could finish, Su Tui's expression suddenly turned cold. Chief Xiao, is this matter any of your concern? Seeing this, Xiao Wuchang was startled and hastily stood up to apologize. Yes, I was foolish. Please don't take offense, Envoy Su. Su Yuan then softened his tone and continued, Chief Xiao, you need to shift your perspective. You and I are both servants of the Su family, and we naturally prioritized the Su family's interests. This matter is all to our benefit and no harm, so why stop it? Furthermore, you should host a banquet tonight. Invite Zhang Chong over and say it's to welcome and cleanse him of his journey. By the way, take care of him directly at the banquet. Xiao Wuchang was shocked and quickly asked, now to kill? Should I notify the officials attending the banquet in advance? However, before he could finish, Su Yuan got up, walked over to him, patted him on the shoulder, and said calmly, no need to say anything more. Once we kill Zhang Chong in front of them, they'll have no choice but to join our Su family's campaign. By then, even if they don't want to revolt, they'll have to. The scene shifts to the prefect's mansion in White Knight County. At this moment, Zhang Chong is in the bathroom, pouring buckets of ice water over himself. The bone-chilling cold makes him exceptionally alert. He knows that he must eliminate all enemies within White Knight County by the end of today. To successfully meet up with Shenlang, he must take control of the city. Then, the two of them can join forces to catch Su Nan off guard, making this old dog lose both his wife and his troops. It seems that between these two, there's never any need for discussion. It's all about synchronizing their strategic intuitions from afar. This is probably the tacit understanding between masters of similar strategic minds. After a while, Zhang Chong orders someone to help him put on his soft armor, and then he drapes his official robe over it. Thinking back, Zhang Chong, since being appointed a civil official years ago, hasn't fought in over a decade, but today, he's finally going to draw his sword again. Master Shen, you've always been curious about my martial skills, haven't you? Well, I hope that today's battle won't disappoint you. At this moment, a messenger from the Chief of Staff's office arrives at the prefect's mansion. Lord Zhang, I am here by order of Chief Xiao to deliver an invitation. Tonight, Chief Xiao has arranged a banquet at Snow Mountain Tower to welcome and cleanse you of your journey. All officials of the 8th rank and above and wealthy merchants from the city will be present to greet you. After hearing this, Zhang Chong looks at the invitation in his hand and chuckles. Since Chief Xiao and my colleagues are so cordial, please tell them that I, Zhang, will certainly attend the banquet on time. After the messenger departs, Zhang Chong goes directly to a secret room within the mansion. Inside, a refined and gentle man is sitting at a desk, focused on writing something. Zhang Chong steps forward slowly, bows respectfully, and says, Princess, tonight, Xiao Wuchang has arranged a banquet at Snow Mountain Tower. I would like to invite you to accompany me. Is that possible? It turns out, this man is actually Princess Ning Jie in disguise. He stands up, nods, and responds, yes, tonight I will accompany you to the banquet as an attendant of Lord Zhang to lend you support. As Zhang Chong's carriage slowly sets off, a leader of 1,000 households, hidden in the shadows, immediately spurs his horse and rushes back to Chief Xiao Wuchang's office to report on their movements. Xiao Wuchang, after listening, asks indifferently, how many people did Zhang Chong bring to the banquet? The leader of 1,000 households responds, he brought only one attendant, plus a small team of 15. Xiao Wuchang chuckles coldly and says, he's quite bold. Is everything ready at Snow Mountain Tower? The leader of 1,000 households nods and says, do not worry, sir. From the chefs to the servants, and even the singers, a total of 37 people, all skilled fighters sent by the Su family, are more than enough to handle one Zhang Chong. Xiao Wuchang nods in satisfaction and slowly says, very well, then let's prepare the feast, our banquet of murder. In the evening, Zhang Chong and his party arrive at the most luxurious tavern in White Knight County, Snow Mountain Tower, and Xiao Wuchang has already been waiting there for a long time. After the two meet, they exchange polite greetings and prepare to enter the building. At that moment, Xiao Wuchang noticed the man closely following Zhang Chong and couldn't help but be taken aback. Zhang Chong explained lightly, this man is a bodyguard assigned to me by the sovereign. He must stay close to me at all times. After hearing this, Xiao Wuchang asked in a low voice, is he from Blackwater Platform? Zhang Chong's expression darkened as he warned, Chief Xiao, do not speculate recklessly. Upon hearing this, Xiao Wuchang quickly shut his mouth and hurried forward to open the door for Zhang Chong, but his mind was filled with disdain. He's just a warrior from Blackwater Platform. Even if he is a leader of 1,000 households level expert, what of it? I don't believe he can stand against the 30 skilled fighters sent by the Su family. As Zhang Chong just stepped into the banquet hall, a group of officials and wealthy merchants immediately immediately crowded around, all smiles as they tried to ingratiate themselves. And Zhang Chong, who had been dominating the official scene for many years, naturally did his part on the surface, letting Xiao Wuchang introduce him one by one, occupying his time for a full quarter of an hour. After all the guests were seated, the performance by the songstresses officially began. Just then, Xiao Wuchang suddenly said out of the blue, "It's strange, it's summer, yet the evening breeze feels somewhat chilly. Go, close all the doors and windows." As soon as he said this, everyone was somewhat surprised, whispering to each other, "Where is it cold? Perhaps Chief Xiao is getting old and frail?" Although the guests did not take it seriously, the atmosphere in the banquet hall had subtly changed. Zhang Chong, however, sensed a dangerous aura. At this moment, to divert everyone's attention, Xiao Wuchang raised his glass and stood up, announcing loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, as everyone knows, the previous prefect Chen Qiulong was dismissed from his post due to corruption, leaving the position of prefect of White Knight County vacant for several months. Now, we have finally welcomed Lord Zhang to the office. The glorious deeds of Lord Zhang are well known to me, and his coming to govern White Knight County is truly a blessing for all. Let us toast to Lord Zhang with this first glass of wine." As his voice fell, all the guests raised their glasses towards Zhang Chong. Under the respectful gaze of everyone, Zhang Chong slowly raised his glass, his eyes coldly staring at the wine inside. At this moment, Xiao Wuchang was extremely nervous inside. After all, he had put a dose of poison in Zhang Chong's wine sufficient to kill an elephant. Zhang Chong merely brought the glass to his nose and sniffed lightly, then showed a hint of regret and said softly, "Indeed, it is good wine. What a pity, someone has poisoned it." After saying this, under the shocked gaze of everyone, he poured the wine from his glass onto the ground. Under the night sky at the furious Tide City dock, a flash of lightning, like a silver snake, cut through the ink-like night sky. Not far off at sea, an inconspicuous wooden boat was moored. Inside the cabin, Crown Prince's concubine Zhao Yan sat quietly, silently waiting for someone's arrival. Just then, a man wearing a mask quietly appeared in front of the cabin. This man, known as the Scapegoat Hero, a legendary figure of the Great Yu dynasty, the thief Ku Tuhuan. Upon seeing him, Zhao Yan immediately said eagerly, "Brother, there is an important task for you, to assassinate a noble, the mythical Turtle Marquis Jin Zhua." Ku Tuhuan was slightly taken aback upon hearing this, then shook his head in refusal. "The mythical Turtle Marquis has done no evil. I cannot raise my hand against him." Seeing his refusal, Zhao Yan's eyes reddened with urgency, and she said excitedly, "When our Zhua family was being destroyed, Jin Zhua could have intervened to save us, but he just watched coldly and did nothing. Did he ever speak a word of justice for us then?" Upon hearing this, Ku Tuhuan's eyes showed a struggle. Zhao Yan continued with a pained expression, tears streaming down her face. "Although you are not my father's biological son, he always treated you as his own and nurtured you carefully. You became the martial champion of Yu Kingdom at 18 and were fortunate enough to become a disciple of Zhua Ci at 19. Now, only you and I remain in the family. If I am to seek revenge for our family, you are the only one I can rely on." Ku Tuhuan remained silent. After a moment, he looked up at Zhao Yan and asked slowly, "Then, Sister Yan, when will you leave the Crown Prince?" Zhao Yan replied softly, "Brother, don't worry. Once I find out who the main schemer behind our family's downfall is, I will leave him and we can escape far away together." After saying this, she reached out and removed Ku Tuhuan's mask. Instantly, a face nearly distorted and disfigured by severe burns was fully exposed to Zhao Yan. She suppressed the discomfort in her heart, stepped forward to cradle his face, and continued, "Brother, trust me, this really is the last time." After speaking, she leaned in and gently kissed Ku Tuhuan's lips. A moment later, she slowly opened her eyes, gazing at him lovingly, and said with emotion, "Brother, once you've killed Jin Zhua, you won't have to do the things you dislike anymore. Then, you can find an island to retreat to. Once I find out who was behind everything back then, I'll come to find you. Together, we can avenge our family, and once it's all over, we can stay together forever, living a life like that of fairy tale lovers." At that moment, Ku Tuhuan, listening to Zhao Yan's depiction of the future and seeing her sincere gaze, felt his resolve waver. But he also knew that Jin Zhua was a good marquis who cared deeply for his people and loved his citizens, and his own principles did not allow him to harm such a good person. Seeing him still hesitant, Zhao Yan simply burst into tears, crying uncontrollably, "Jin Zhua is not innocent at all. I was as close as sisters with Jin Mulan, but when the Zhua family faced annihilation, I desperately pleaded with the Jin family for protection, yet they cruelly refused. In the end, I fell into the hands of the Hidden Origin Society and suffered relentless torment from those beasts." Hearing this, Ku Tuhuan's last line of defense was completely shattered. The defilement of the woman he loved most had always been an indelible pain in his heart. He stood up, picked up his mask, and said in a deep voice, "Give me an hour, and I will bring Jin Zhua's head to you." The timeline returns to White Knight County at the welcoming banquet Chief of Staff Xiao Wuchang held for Zhang Chong. At this moment, Zhang Chong had already detected the poison in the wine, but he calmly exposed this fact in front of everyone and poured the wine from his glass directly onto the ground. Just when everyone was puzzled, a maid suddenly pulled out a dagger from her sleeve and fiercely stabbed towards Zhang Chong's neck. The speed was so fast it was almost impossible to react in time. However, Zhang Chong's reaction was even quicker. However, he immediately lifted the wine glass in his hand and smashed it hard against the forehead of the female assassin. Bang! The porcelain cup embedded in her forehead, blood splattered, and her brain burst, killing the assassin instantly. At this moment, all the hidden assassins, seeing their cover blown, discarded their disguises, drew their hidden blades, and charged at Zhang Chong. Simultaneously, Xiao Wuchang also made a decisive call, shouting loudly, "Lord Su Nan has ordered, kill Zhang Chong and his companions, and leave no one alive." As his voice fell, the warriors present drew their swords and charged into battle. In an instant, 100 warriors and dozens of assassins had already surrounded Zhang Chong and a disguised princess named Jia. The two exchanged a glance, showing no fear in their eyes, and simultaneously drew soft swords from their sleeves, leaping into the enemy crowd. The guests and officials present, not understanding what was happening, scrambled under the tables, terrified. As Chief of Staff Xiao gone mad? How dare he brazenly attempt to assassinate the prefect? Is he trying to rebel? Meanwhile, outside the castle of Furious Tide City, the rain pours heavily. At this time, inside the castle's treasury, Zhang Yuan, a scholar from Sky's NC Pavilion, was organizing ancient texts while quietly fuming. She had recently received a handwritten letter from Shenlang, stating that a vast collection of ancient texts had been discovered in a treasury left by Qiu Tianwei, and he hoped to donate them to Sky's NC Pavilion. Upon hearing this news, Zhang Yuan had immediately rushed to Furious Tide City, full of urgency. She had thought that not only would she acquire valuable texts but also establish a profound academic friendship with Shenlang. However, upon arrival, she discovered that Shenlang was not there. With no other choice, she stayed behind, dejectedly helping her apprentices organize and catalog the ancient books. The more she thought about it, the more irritated she became, and she couldn't help but start nitpicking everywhere, even cursing, making it miserable for the apprentices who quietly complained about Scholar Zhang behind her back. No wonder no one wants her at her age. She must have entered menopause early. Meanwhile, on the exterior wall of Jinzhua's room, Ku Tuhuan clung to the wall like a gecko, holding his breath and concentrating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Although his martial skills made dealing with Jinzhua not difficult, Jinzhua was always guarded by skilled protectors. He had to wait for Jinzhua to be alone or for the skilled protector named Jin Shiring to leave. Otherwise, it would be hard for him to deliver a fatal blow in one move. Thus, he patiently lay in wait for half an hour. Finally, Jin Shiring's voice came from inside the room. "I'm going to prepare dinner. I'll have to trouble you two to guard the marquee here." The opportunity had arrived. It was time to strike. The next second, with a swoosh sound, Ku Tuhuan's figure darted into the room like black lightning. Before anyone could react, he had already sprung up again, his long sword gleaming coldly as he thrust it directly at Jinzhua. Just at this critical moment, Dr. Nzaishi reacted extremely quickly, unhesitatingly using his body to shield Jinzhua. Ku Tuhuan knew well that Nzaishi was a great benevolent person who had saved countless lives and could not harm him. Thus, at this life and death moment, he forcefully retracted his strength, changing his thrust to a shove, and flung Nzaishi away. However, as he prepared for a second attack, a strong gust of wind hit, and Zaiqian, who had been hiding in the shadows, suddenly charged out wielding the storm pear blossom spear. In an instant, countless fine needles shot towards Ku Tuhuan like a fierce storm. Seeing this, Ku Tuhuan immediately raised his sword and swung wildly, the blade creating a strong airflow that instantly formed a massive defensive vortex, blocking all the fine needles. In the blink of an eye, the hidden needles of the storm pear blossom spear had been completely shot. Seeing Ku Tuhuan's astonishingly fast blocking speed, Zaiqian felt a surge of cold fear and inwardly marveled. This guy's swordsmanship is too formidable. Realizing he was no match for Ku Tuhuan, Zaiqian gritted his teeth, stepped forward, and positioned himself in front of Jinzhua, shouting, "Lord, run! I'll hold him off." But how could Jinzhua, a marquis, let his subordinate sacrifice himself for nothing? He pulled Zaiqian behind him and shouted sternly, "Your target is me. Do not harm the innocent." However, before he could finish speaking, thud, Ku Tuhuan's sword had already pierced Jinzhua's chest. Upon seeing this, Zaiqian's pupils constricted sharply, and a towering rage surged within him. The next moment, like a furious beast, he charged wildly at Ku Tuhuan without regard for his own safety. However, his resistance was undoubtedly futile. Ku Tuhuan raised his hand and gently waved it, sending Zaiqian flying backward like a kite with its string cut. Zaiqian spat blood and fell heavily to the ground. Seeing this, Jinzhua, enduring the severe pain in his body, said with a trembling voice, "Your target is me. Then kill me. But please, do not kill these innocent people." Upon hearing this, Ku Tuhuan was suddenly taken aback. No, it shouldn't be like this. Sister Yan had said that after Jinzhua was promoted to marquis, he regarded human lives as worthless and didn't care about the lives and deaths of his subordinates. But now, why? At the brink of death, would he still push the subordinate, blocking him out of the way? At this moment, he fell into confusion again. Why is everything different from what Sister Yan said? Jinzhua is clearly a good person. If I kill him, then what difference would there be between me, Ku Tuhuan, and a beast? As he was in extreme turmoil internally, a frustrated voice suddenly came from the doorway. "Mythical Turtle Marquis, let's stop here for now. Come over and do a handover with me first." However, before Before the voice finished, Zhang Yuan sharply sensed something was amiss with the atmosphere inside the room, and Ku Tuhuan, upon hearing this voice, also shuddered involuntarily. My teacher from when I was studying at Sky's End Sea Pavilion? Ku Tuhuan had studied for many years at Sky's End Sea Pavilion, where Zhang Yuan, the goddess of Sky's End Sea Pavilion, was his teacher in Chinese studies and arithmetic. In an instant, memories of the past surged into his mind like a tide. Vivid images of Zhang Yuan's strict teaching appeared before his eyes. I've explained this problem twice already. Don't make me explain it a third time. You have the loudest voice in the entire building. Why are you looking at me? Look at your book. What are you looking at the book for? Look at the blackboard. You're not stupid. You just don't study hard enough. Almost every day was spent under her scolding. At this moment, Zhang Yuan also recognized the person before her and, infuriated, loudly chastised. Shui Chen, what are you doing? Daring to assassinate the mythical turtle marquis? Have you grown tired of living? After saying this, she quickly pulled out her teaching whip from her bosom and stormed towards him with a fierce aura. Ku Tuhuan intended to deny his identity, but his body instinctively reacted. Instantly crouching and covering his head, he allowed Zhang Yuan to beat him with her whip. At this moment, even though Ku Tuhuan's body ached from the whipping, that familiar feeling surged through him again. It was an indescribably complex emotion. This past, though full of embarrassment and discomfort, was strangely missed by him. However, this bizarre scene, seen through the eyes of the bewildered Jin Shua, appeared entirely different. With a puzzled face, he wondered to himself, what exactly is going on here? The man, wearing a mask and known for upholding justice in the martial world, is the legendary figure of Yu Kingdom, the great thief Ku Tuhuan. But such a renowned figure tragically lost both his parents at the age of 10 due to war, becoming an orphan from that point on. Later, while fleeing from disaster, he accidentally displayed a rare bloodline talent, which led to his fortunate encounter with Peace Pavilion Count Zhuo Guangbu, who took him in as an adopted son and named him Shui Chen. From then on, he lived up to the Zhuo family's expectations, passing the martial exam at the age of 13, and at 18, he earned the title of Great You's Martial Champion. However, his exceptional talents stirred jealousy among his peers in the Zhuo family, who continuously ostracized and bullied him. Only his adoptive sister, Sui Zhaoyan, would always bravely stand by his side, protecting him when he was mistreated. It was from that moment on that Shui Chen began to develop different feelings for Zhaoyan. Yet, life is unpredictable. After turning 18, he fell ill with a strange disease, causing his face to twist as if it had been splashed with sulfuric acid, and his voice became hoarse and rough. The Zhuo family searched far and wide for renowned doctors, but no one could cure his ailment. Fortunately, after much inquiry, hope was found in Sky's End Sea Pavilion. There, Zhuo Guangbu used his connections with the Zhuo family to send Shui Chen to the pavilion, where he became a registered disciple of the pavilion's master, Zhuo Ci. As expected, Sky's End Sea Pavilion lived up to its reputation. Soon, Shui Chen's disease was controlled, and his appearance began to return to normal. Not only that, but his martial skills advanced rapidly due to his innate talent. Everything was progressing steadily in a positive direction until one day, 6 years ago, the Zhuo family faced a catastrophic disaster. The Peace Pavilion Count, Zhuo Guangbu, was unexpectedly executed, and the entire family was slaughtered overnight. At that time, Shui Chen, far away at Sky's End Sea Pavilion, was unable to calm his heart upon hearing the news. In search of the truth, he quietly left the pavilion, becoming a mysterious figure in the martial world known as the Great Thief Ku Tuhuan. Now, on the night Ku Tuhuan attempted to assassinate Jin Shua, Zhang Yuan, who had once been his teacher, was furious upon seeing Jin Shua Marquis injured. She immediately picked up a riding crop and started beating Ku Tuhuan. After a moment, still fuming with anger, Zhang Yuan shouted, Shui Chen, extend the hand you just held the sword with. Upon hearing the command, Ku Tuhuan reflexively extended his right hand, and Zhang Yuan, seemingly from nowhere, pulled out a ruler and struck his hand hard. How have you been acting out there? Have you completely forgotten the teachings I gave you? After a while, Ku Tuhuan snapped back to his senses, realizing he had left Sky's End Sea Pavilion, and Zhang Yuan was no longer his teacher. Why should he still listen to her and let her hit him? With her level of skill, he could crush her with a single finger. He raised his head, ready to resist, but when he saw Zhang Yuan's terrifying gaze filled with affection, he immediately deflated. No, I can't bring myself to harm Teacher Zhang. Though Teacher Zhang had been strict with him back then, it was her relentless research into ancient texts that had helped alleviate the symptoms of his strange illness. If not for the sudden disaster in the Zhuo family, he would probably have been cured by now. Jin Zhuo, still heavily wounded, was stunned by the scene, forgetting his own injuries. Realizing the strange look Zhang Yuan was giving him, she suddenly remembered Jin Zhuo was still hurt and quickly turned to Zaitian. Doctor An, are you alright? If you're fine, hurry up and stop the bleeding, and bandage the marquis. As she spoke, it seemed like she suddenly remembered something and turned to lift Ku Tuhuan's mask. As soon as the mask came off, revealing his decayed, twisted face, Zhang Yuan was enraged. She slapped him hard across the face and scolded, You little brat, I nearly cured you back then, but why did you leave without a word? Ku Tuhuan lowered his head, stammering and not daring to speak the truth. How could he admit he left to investigate the destruction of the Zhuo family and seek revenge? Seeing his silence, Zhang Yuan glanced at the fallen mask and asked, "Is the Kutuhuan causing trouble everywhere really you?" Kutuhuan froze, about to explain, but Zhang Yuan's slap came again. "You little brat, when you lie, can't you stop darting your eyes around?" Kutuhuan was stunned. He had heard rumors about recent events, but those were all done by others in his name. It wasn't his fault. Just as he was about to explain further, Zhang Yuan suddenly commanded, "Now stand straight. I'm going to check your health." At her command, Kutuhuan stood up straight without thinking. Then, Zhang Yuan approached and forcibly opened his eyes to check, before angrily saying, "Shuichen, have you lost your mind? If you delay your condition any longer, you'll only be waiting for death. Do you understand? Stay here quietly for the next few days, and once I'm done, I'll take you back to Sky's End Sea Pavilion for treatment." Kutuhuan, hearing this, instinctively looked at Jinzhua, feeling torn inside. Should I continue to kill Jinzhua or not? Before he could answer himself, Zhang Yuan grabbed his ear and started dragging him to her quarters. Realizing the situation, Kutuhuan panicked. There were still many things he hadn't resolved. He couldn't go back with his teacher now. He quickly broke free from Zhang Yuan's grasp, thanked her, and then fled at lightning speed. Seeing this, Zhang Yuan was furious, leaning against the windowsill, shouting out, "Shuichen, it must have been Zhuo Xiaoyan who sent you to assassinate the mythical turtle Marquis. I warn you, if you dare meet her again, I will have her wanted in the name of Sky's End Sea Pavilion. Did you hear me?" Upon hearing this, the hidden Kutuhuan trembled in his heart. "Teacher Zhang, you're really too harsh." However, when Zhao Yan's disappointed gaze appeared in his mind, he couldn't help but sigh. "Forget it. Since I failed to complete the task Sister Yan gave me this time, I won't go to see her for now." At this moment, in Jinzhua's room, Jinzhua, having bandaged his wounds, stood up and bowed to Zhang Yuan. "Thank you, Teacher Zhang, for saving me today." Zhang Yuan shook her head and sighed. "Actually, even if I weren't here today, he wouldn't have killed you. Shui Chen is my student, so I know him well. Although he's the infamous big thief Kutuhuan, he has a kind heart. All the people who have died by his sword are those who truly deserved it." Jinzhua was taken aback. He suddenly remembered that Zhui Chen was the one from the Zhuo family, the young man who had become the martial champion at the age of 18, shocking the entire Flame Emperor capital city. Zhang Yuan sighed again. The real reason the Zhuo family was wiped out was because of Zhui Chen. This child was highly talented, which made some families in the court jealous. They spread rumors saying that Zhui Chen was a remnant of Jianli, and they presented all sorts of so-called evidence. What's even more shocking is that the Flame Emperor, without any investigation, believed these claims, and as a result, the entire Zhuo family was slaughtered overnight. Upon hearing this, Jinzhua was shocked. The Peace Pavilion Count's mansion back then was far more influential than the mythical Turtle Count's mansion, so the fall of the Zhuo family had always been a great secret. The outside world only knew it was related to the Great Flame Empire, but no one knew the real reason. At this point, Zhang Yuan continued, "Our pavilion master, Zhuo Xi, has always valued Zhui Chen. To clear his name, he used all his connections to investigate and confirm that Zhui Chen had no relationship with Jianli. The pavilion master even wrote a letter to the Flame Emperor, which finally cleared the Zhuo family's name." Jinzhua was filled with regret. The royal family is the most heartless. Even if the charges were cleared, there's hardly anyone left in the Zhuo family. Suddenly, Zhang Yuan changed the subject. "Mythical Turtle Count, since someone tried to assassinate you, it seems that a great war is about to break out in Furious Tide City. We at Sky's End Sea Pavilion are not suitable to be on the battlefield, so I will take my people and leave tomorrow." Jinzhua suddenly understood. In other words, the real aim of those who sent people to assassinate him was to take control of Furious Tide City. Remembering what Zhang Yuan had just said about the Zhuo family and Zhao Yan, Jinzhua immediately thought of the Crown Prince, and his anger surged. "Crown Prince, are you targeting me just because I didn't give you my daughter as you wished?" Confused, Jinzhua asked Zhang Yuan again, "Teacher Zhang, we've never had any conflicts with the Crown Prince. Why does he keep acting against my Jin family?" Zhang Yuan smiled. "Who says there's no conflict? Do you know that the Crown Prince and the Hidden Origin Society are mutually dependent on money and power? Furious Tide City, the most important trade hub in the eastern seas of Yu Kingdom, originally belonged to the Hidden Origin Society, but after your Jin family took control, you allied with the Heavenly Path Society, cutting off the Crown Prince's financial supply. And now, the situation is that whoever controls Furious Tide City will control trade in the eastern seas. To regain their interests, the Hidden Origin Society and the Crown Prince will stop at nothing to start a war." Jinzhua was shocked again. He hadn't realized how deep the relationship between the Crown Prince and the Hidden Origin Society had become. Zhang Yuan nodded. "Yes, and although Zhao Yan is the Crown Prince's concubine, she represents him in negotiations because she's from the Hidden Origin Society. I think Shui Chen, that fool, must have been deceived by Zhao Yan." She then casually added, "Mythical Turtle Count, since you've been attacked, you should lay low for a while. It's best to create the illusion that you've died. This might be key to defending Furious Tide City later." Without waiting for Jinzhua to ask again, she turned and waved. "From here on out, you'll handle things yourselves, and please pass on a message to Shenlang. That sly little fox tried to scheme against me. I won't let him off easily." Upon hearing this, Jinzhua felt awkward. His son-in-law certainly stirred trouble wherever he went. Where had he learned to act like this? After After sending Zhang Yuan away, Jinzhuo turned and ordered, immediately release the news that I was assassinated and my life is in danger, and that I will no longer meet with anyone for now. After speaking, he looked out the window. Since you want to start this war while Shenlang is away, let's see how you plan to take Furious Tide City. At the same time, in Snow Mountain Tower in White Knight County City, Zhang Chong and the disguised Princess Chang, both covered in blood, stood shoulder to shoulder with swords in hand in the center of the hall. The bodies of the chief of staff soldiers and assassins lay all over the floor, silently declaring the victor. The mastermind, Chief of Staff Xiao Wuchang, was paralyzed with fear after witnessing the scene. He knew that Zhang Chong was skilled in martial arts, but never expected him to be so powerful. Isn't that person sent by the Blackwater platform? I didn't expect the Blackwater platform's experts to be this formidable now. Just as he was wondering, Zhang Chong suddenly turned and walked toward him with his sword in hand. Realizing the situation, Xiao Wuchang was horrified and trembled as he spoke. Lord Zhang, what do you want? Are you really going to kill an official of the court in front of everyone? Zhang Chong remained silent. After a long pause, he coldly said, so, Lord Xiao knows it's not allowed to assassinate court officials? Without giving Xiao Wuchang another chance to respond, he swung his sword and decapitated him. This action also terrified the other officials hiding around the room. They had merely followed Xiao Wuchang's orders to attend the banquet. How did they end up in such a situation? At this moment, Zhang Chong suddenly turned, pulled out an imperial edict from his robes, and proclaimed, the sovereign has decreed that upon Zhang Chong's arrival in White Knight County City, actions may be taken as deemed fit, with no regard for the process, only the outcome. Upon hearing this, all the officials present immediately knelt and begged for mercy. Sir, Xiao Wuchang, and we have no relations. Zhang Chong, please see our innocence. We are willing to cooperate with you in exposing him. However, Zhang Chong ignored them and instead looked at the disguised princess, Ning Jie. Ning Jie immediately understood, took out a list from her robes, handed it to the warrior beside her, and instructed, go and arrest everyone on this list. No mercy. In no time, the hall was filled with the agonized screams of corrupt officials. After eliminating 80% of them, the one-sided massacre finally stopped. Zhang Chong glanced at the remaining officials and said indifferently, although you didn't affiliate with the Su family, your conduct is vile. I will spare your lives, but you must be imprisoned to prevent you from causing trouble when the war comes. At this moment, one brave man, his life on the line, asked, Lord Zhang, if you imprison us, who will handle the matters of the government in this city? Zhang Chong glared at him and coldly replied, the war is coming, and White Knight County will immediately be placed under martial law. After a pause, he shouted outside, pass the order, seal off White Knight County immediately. No one is allowed in or out. Zhang Chong then personally led 2,000 elite soldiers to the 3-leader of 1,000 households' residences in White Knight County. Within half a day, he had slaughtered almost all of them. Next, he selected over 400 elite warriors from the more than 1,000 captured soldiers, incorporating them into his own forces. That night, he led his army to exterminate all the Western region merchants and warriors in the city. In just one day and night, the entire White Knight County city was completely under his control. At this moment, Zhang Chong stood on the smoke-filled street, watching the rising sun in the east. He silently thought, Master Shen, I have lived up to my mission and completely captured White Knight County. Now, it's your turn. Back in Snow Ridge City the night before, Shen Lang found himself surrounded by greedy militiamen outside the city lord's mansion. Watching these formerly meek people now turned brutal and vicious like bandits, Shen Lang felt his scalp tingle. He knew clearly that if he didn't make them act and seize White Knight County, he might very well be eaten alive by these people. He immediately ordered, since everyone is so eager, I won't waste more words. Everyone, listen up. We will march to White Knight County tonight and catch those Western merchants off guard. As soon as the words were spoken, everyone immediately cheered excitedly, as if injected with adrenaline. Then, 20,000 soldiers, like hungry wolves, madly sprinted towards White Knight County. At the same time, Su Quan's main camp received the news that Shen Lang's mob was heading towards White Knight County. Another message arrived, stating that Chief of Staff Zhao's assassination of Zhang had been successful. Su Quan, overjoyed, immediately walked out of his tent and issued an order. All troops, listen up. March immediately and form a half-circle to expel Shen Lang's mob into White Knight County. In this battle, we will not only eradicate these mobs, seize their wealth, but also skin Shen Lang alive and take over White Knight County. This city is ours. With that, he jumped onto his horse and led his army swiftly towards White Knight County. From a high vantage point, Su Quan could see that the 3 divisions of the Su army had already formed a massive encirclement, trapping Shen Lang's 20,000 militiamen. Meanwhile, 10 miles from White Knight County, after a night of travel, Shen Lang and his group were finally nearing their destination. Looking at the silent city before him, he knew Zhang had succeeded and that over 10,000 of Su Quan's forces were lying in ambush behind them. Seeing the plan unfold so smoothly, Shen Lang couldn't help but smile. He turned around and shouted to his militiamen, brothers, I have arranged for supporters inside White Knight County, and they've opened the gates. We can rush in and loot to our heart's content. Several of the leaders were stunned, quickly looking toward the gate in the distance. distance. Indeed, they saw the gate ajar, with no torches or guards in sight. This scene excited the few brainless leaders, who didn't realize that it was exactly the trap Shenlang had set for them. At that moment, Shenlang shouted, "Big fool Wu Lai, you two quickly take the gate." He then turned to the 200 female generals and said, "Ladies, follow me to assist and clear the way. The rest of you, follow us in and let's storm the city and loot it." With that, he charged toward the gate. After a short distance, he whispered to the 2 female generals beside him, "Speed it up. We must get into the city before these militiamen." Meanwhile, several of the militiamen leaders, watching Shenlang lead the way, exchanged glances and quietly whispered, "Once we've looted White Knight County, what should we do next? Why not capture this pretty boy city lord and offer him to Lord Sunan? Maybe we can get another reward." At the same time, Su Quan, the Grand Master of the Chu Kingdom Banrua, and the Buddhist monk Kunan, representing the 3 major forces of the Su family, had gathered. Su Quan, leading the charge, raised his sword and shouted, "All troops, listen up. Eradicate these mobs and capture Shenlang. We must seize White Knight County." As soon as he finished speaking, thousands of cavalrymen rushed towards Shenlang's militiamen. "Shenlang, you little bastard, wait for us. Today, with the 3 of us top experts acting together, even if Sword King Li Chanchio is protecting you, you're as good as dead." Back at White Knight County, the greedy militiamen couldn't wait to rush into the city and loot. Seeing their ugly faces, Shenlang frowned. He immediately ordered the female generals to stand guard at the gate. This move instantly enraged the militiamen. One stepped forward and sneered, "Lord Shen, what are you doing? The gates are open, and you still want to stop us from making our fortune?" Shenlang coldly replied, "Don't forget the agreement we made earlier. You may loot the Western merchants, but you cannot harm you kingdom people or violate any women." Before he could finish, the leader of the bandits sneered from the side, "Lord Shen, it's already this late, and you're still worried about others? I suggest you take care of your own people and leave. Otherwise, we might not control ourselves and kill you to offer to Lord Sunan." Upon hearing this, the crowd became agitated, and they shouted in unison, "If Shenlang blocks our path to wealth, just kill him." Seeing this, Shenlang couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Good advice falls on deaf ears. These people have lost all conscience. Since you're looking for death, I won't stop you. He then said, "Everyone, open the gate and let them in." Seeing Shenlang yield so easily, the crazed militiamen waved their swords and laughed as they rushed through the gate. However, as soon as they entered the city, they were stunned by the sight before them. Over 100 fully armored regular soldiers had set up defensive boards on 3 sides, blocking their path. At this moment, while they were still in a daze, Shenlang quickly hid behind the defense boards with the female generals. Once everything was in place, the warriors holding crossbows suddenly stood up from behind the defense boards. Immediately, elite warriors armed with weapons filled the top of the city walls. At this time, Zhang Chong gave the order, "Fire." In an instant, countless sharp arrows rained down like a storm, targeting the leading raiders. The militiamen, who hadn't yet exited the city wall, turned around and tried to flee. However, there were too many people pouring into the city, and they could not go back. Seeing that a one-sided massacre had begun, the militia leaders raised their machetes and decided to fight to the death. The disguised princess suddenly jumped down from above, and with a swift move, several leaders' heads were chopped off. Meanwhile, Zhang Chong's arrows did not stop, continuing to shoot at the greedy raiders. A quarter of an hour later, under the barrage of arrows, the bodies of the initial raiders piled up like a small mountain at the entrance of the inner city. The militiamen who were blocked at the city gate only now realized that their leaders were already dead inside the city. Now, with no leader, they didn't dare act rashly and could only watch as the female generals closed the city gates, trapping them outside. Inside the city, Shenlang walked up to Zhang Chong and said with a smile, "Lord Zhang, now your military funds will be full. Most of the dead were bandits, each carrying a large sum of plundered gold. If we gather it, it'll be quite a sum." Zhang Chong twitched his mouth and said, "Young Master Shen, your actions this time are truly bold. The entire White Knight County will probably hate you to the bone. You and I will definitely become a thorn in their side." Shenlang, with an indifferent expression, replied, "Those in high positions must understand that a man without cruelty is not a real man. We can only hold on to the bottom line of kindness, but we cannot be soft-hearted. After all, in this cruel reality, once we show mercy, it will be us who die." Zhang Chong smiled to show agreement and then invited, "Su Quan's army is coming to kill us. Young Master Shen, why don't you come with me to the city wall and watch the show?" Shenlang also smiled. "I just hope that when Sunan finds out the truth, he won't be so angry that he'll spit blood." Shenlang turned to Wu Lai and said, "Let the sisters collect all the gold coins from these bodies. This will be the military funds for the final battle with Sunan." Moments later, the two stood on the city wall, looking down at the scene outside the city. Over 10,000 militiamen, like headless flies, were at a loss in this tense situation. Not far away, Su Quan's army could be heard, and thousands of cavalry charged toward them with great momentum. Finally, the militiamen realized that danger was approaching, but the city gates were already closed. No matter how much they hammered and cursed at the gates, it was futile. At this moment, Shenlang shouted from above, "Sunan's army is coming. Those who want to survive should hurry and escape. If it's dark enough, maybe you can still find a chance to survive." Hearing the sound of horses' hooves getting closer, closer from behind, the militiamen could no longer curse Shenlang. They instantly scattered in all directions like frightened rabbits. Shenlang looked at the scene below and sighed deeply. Hurry up, this is a life or death gamble. If you're lucky enough to escape, the plundered gold will be enough for you to live a rich and carefree life. On the other side, in Furious Tide City, ever since Jinzhua announced the assassination news, the city appeared calm on the surface, but in reality, there was an undercurrent. At first, everyone doubted the death of the mythical turtle Marquis, but when he didn't show up for a long time and all affairs were handled by Jin Shuring, rumors spread even more. Recently, most of the mythical turtle Marquis fleet had returned to the Jin family, and the Heavenly Path Society's caravans had stopped sailing. Various signs led the public to believe that the mythical turtle Marquis had indeed met with some mishap. The public only speculated, but some were truly anxious. At this moment, in a secret room, Zhui Zhaoyan was having a private conversation with Shu Tingyu of the Hidden Origin Society. Zhaoyan said anxiously, "I'm sorry, but that Kutuhuan didn't come back to find me after completing his task, so I can't confirm whether Jinzhua's death is true or not. I'll go to Mythical Turtle City to meet Jin Mulan. She usually doesn't hide her emotions. Perhaps I can learn the truth from her." Shu Tingyu shook his head and refused. "No, if you go, you'll alert the enemy and involve the Crown Prince. Supporting the Crown Prince is the Shu family's most important strategy. We cannot take risks lightly. Also, do you know how much we, the Hidden Origin Society, have spent to reclaim Furious Tide City?" Ning Yuanxian borrowed 2.3 million gold coins without collateral. As soon as these words were spoken, Zhui Zhaoyan was stunned. But Ning Yuanxian borrowed the money without any assets as collateral. If he defaults, the Hidden Origin Society won't be able to recover it at all. Shu Tingyu continued. "Not only that, the 30,000-strong army we've gathered is ready to move out at any time, and we've already advanced more than 1 million in military funds. The situation is critical now. The arrows are on the string, and they must be released. We must win this battle." At this point, he sighed. "Forget it. You don't need to worry about this anymore. Whether or not Jinzhua is dead, I have other ways to confirm. You may leave now." After Zhui Zhaoyan left, Shu Tingyu called in his trusted subordinate and ordered, "Go activate the snowman. He must find out tonight."